Hello students, this is a class for BA Part First English Literature. We will be talking about Neoclassical Age, which is in your course. What is Neoclassical Age? We can divide Neoclassical period of literature into three parts, or you can say there are three stages through which this Neoclassical period is stretched: the Restoration period, the Augustan period, and the age of Dr. Johnson. We have already done the Restoration period, but let us see how we can define Neoclassical age. The 18th century in English literature has been called the Neoclassical age, which we call Augustan age also, or the age of reason also. When we use the term Augustan age, it comes from the self conscious imitation of the original Julius Caesar's son, Augustus Caesar's era or period in Roman Empire, where the Augustan writers like Virgil and Horace, who used to write epical poems, uh, they were imitated in this age, and many of the writers of this period were highly influenced by these Augustan writers. Specifically, the Neoclassical age was the period after the Restoration era, or you can say after the death of Alexander Pope. The major writers of the age were Alexander Pope, Dr. Johnson, and if we talk about poetry, the major poet was Dryden, and Jonathan Swift and Joseph Addison were the great prose satirists or prose writers. Neoclassical period ended in 1798 when Wordsworth and Coleridge published the Romantic Lyrical Ballads. And with this publication of lyrical ballads, Romanticism is supposed to be started. It is believed to be started. Some popular types of literature in neoclassical age were generally the writers of neoclassical age wrote parodies. Parodies means they were already classical epical poems, but they would parody or you can say mimic or imitate, या वो उनकी बिल्कुल पैरोडी की तरह से नकल बना करके देवर सीरियस सब्जेक्ट्स in Augustan age, Virgil and Horace, like writers, they wrote very, you can say, uh, heroical poems, but the kind of poetry that was written in this particular age was a poetry, a parody or mimicry of these Augustan writers, original Augustan writers. So it was actually a parody. Uh, the purpose of writing this parody was to imitate the high standards of the classical age, but for ludicrous or you can say humorous purposes. The writing of essay became very predominant in this age. People started writing essays, and there were variety of subjects put into these essays, and the most popular form of writing was satire. Dryden was a great satirist. Then we can name Alexander Pope also as a great satirist. Jonathan Swift is another writer who has written many mock heroic uh, satires. People were writing letters also. Letter writing also became a very popular art in this age, and fables. Fables are the stories, or you can say anecdotes, in which animals also behave like human beings. So they are fables, like our Panchatantra stories. And melodrama. In this age, melodrama was very popular. Melodrama means the kind of drama which would, you can say, heighten the, uh, the comedy of manners, you can say. And sentimental and anti-sentimental comedies were written, in which there were a lot of intrigues, and there were lot of, you can say, uh, artificial manners were presented on the stage. If we talk about Restoration period, it started in 1660 with the restoration of King Charles II, and it was after a long period of Puritan dominion in England, and this restoration of Charles II brought a new change in English literature also. In the rule of Oliver Cromwell, we all know, stage was closed. There were no dramas presented on stage in that age, and people were writing more and more Puritan kind of poetry. That is to say, no romantic poetry was being written, and they were not publishing poems, because in that particular Commonwealth era, people believed that poetry would beguile, or you can say, poetry would uh, provide a bad influence on the characters of the people of England. But with the restoration of Charles II in 1660, the theatres were reopened, poems were being written, romantic poems or heroic poems were being written. New group of writers began to write plays in this age. Restoration literature continued to appeal to heroic ideals of love and honor, particularly on stage in heroic tragedy. And the famous writers of this particular age are John Dryden, John Milton, Sir William Temple, John Locke, Samuel Pepys, Jean Racine, Jean Baptiste. These were some famous writers of this age. And this age is also called Augustan age. We are discussing this after the name of Augustus Caesar, the great emperor in Rome. When the Roman literature reached to its heyday, or heyday means peak, this period was named after that period, the Augustan period, or you can say classical period. There grew an unprecedented love for Greek and Roman classical literature, and a lot of works were translated. The heroic meter, the mock heroic poems, and the bombastic phraseology was used in this period to imitate or mimic the classical Augustan age literature. The famous writers of Augustan age are Jonathan Swift, Alexander Pope, Joseph Addison, and Francis Mary. Now we come to the last portion of this age, the age of Johnson. These are all intermingled, intermixed. This period marks the transition towards the upcoming Romantic age or Romanticism, though the period is still largely neoclassical. Much was happening around the world politically, such as both the American Revolution and French Revolution. French Revolution was fought under the headings, under the motto of liberty, equality, and fraternity. This time marked a transition in English literature also, from the structure and formality of neoclassical writers to the emotional, ungoverned writings of Romanticism. Famous writers are Samuel Johnson, Edward Gibbon, George Crabbe, Robert Burns, William Cooper, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin. To conclude, the neoclassical era or period in literature brought a sense of decorum and stability to the writers. There were rules to be carefully followed, and there was a structure to be upheld. That's all for neoclassical age. Thank you very much.